Hello, everybody. Hello, welcome in. Welcome to a Friday night, Friday night learning stuff, I guess we can call it. We'll see if that title clicks or not. But welcome in, everyone. Good to see you. Hello, Krista. Hi, Inspired Kaya. Hello, Nikki. Hello, good to see you. Thanks for coming by. Hi. Neil, hello, welcome. 502. Oh, we love that. Mary May, thank you. We love that. Glad everyone could join. Hello, Estelle. Lee, hello. Bart. Is it Frick? I love that name. Frick Jr. Oh my gosh, I'm loving that. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. So I made my 7 o'clock, which is 7 o'clock Central Time, which is my best time to go live. I had yesterday morning, I had gone live, but I've been not able to hit this 7 o'clock until today. So I'm very excited. Just a little light reading, Deb. Yes, quite. Very light. Oh my goodness. Yes, good evening. The world is great. It really is, Name Vet. The world is great. Yikes. All right, so I still have lots of things to share with everybody. I still have executive orders that I do plan to continue to go through. I still have P25, and I will continue to go through that as well. So I have a stack of things. But I thought for tonight, this was one thing that was requested multiple times, is that we would, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here, our Homestead too. Welcome in. So, thank you. So one thing that had been requested was to go through the German Constitution. We have the Constitution that was set out before the bad man. I have to watch my words a little bit. So this was originally the Constitution. Before all of that, it was in 1919. And then we have the Enabling Act that was passed in 1933. That allowed the bad man to get power. So I thought we could look through that. It's only, a page and a half. So once the Enabling Act passed, then he really came into a high level of power. And then we have the current German Constitution. Now, we do know that they're having some troubles in Germany right now. So I thought, well, let's just kind of skip around and go through and see what things look like. Yes. Hi, James. Hello. Welcome. Yeah, so no, Elon was not born in the United States. So pass it on, everyone. Pass it along. The bad man. You know what I mean, the bad man. The bad man. So I am not an expert in German history by any means, but I do and have looked through their laws and how they changed. Because at the end of the day, and this is one thing that a lot of people have been asking me about, the bad man actually used their own constitution against them to gain control. So several people have said, well, can our constitution do that? And I am saying multiple times, no, it cannot. Because our constitution's unique, actually. There are lots of constitutions everywhere all over the world, but there is no constitution that's exactly like ours, because ours is kind of a weird blend. Yes, yeah. I think at some point Mr. Musk is going to fall out of favor here. Studying to be a lawyer in Germany. Oh, lovely. Oh, I love that. I love it. So I thought, let's talk about it. This is something that is really on a lot of people's minds, and is very stressful for a lot of people. So I thought, well, let's just talk about it. Talk about it for tonight. So let's start here. Again, and if anyone wants to add to the information here, please feel free. I am going to be careful with my language so that we don't have any problems. So there are certain words that I will not say tonight. So just kind of bear with me on that one. But, good evening. Hello. So basically, and this is really interesting, right? We used to have two Germanys, right? Some of you may not know that. We used to have an East and a West Germany. But we're going to talk about the Germany itself all the way back to the Bolshevik Revolution, which was in Russia. So that's where their original constitution is starting from here. So keep in mind, too, everybody, with the United States and our Constitution, again, it is a unique creature that we invented here, and based off of a bunch of different rules and ideologies, and we mushed them all together to come up with ours. So, yes. Oh, VC, that's so sweet. The wall in Berlin. Right, exactly. But we'll start at a place before the big split. So let's just kind of take a look. First of all, we've got the Constitution of the German, and then I'm not going to say the R word here. I'm going to say Reich instead of this word, so we don't have any troubles. Exactly. So let's take a look at it. This is what we've got. I'm just going to read the very beginning part, and then we'll look through and see what they have for freedoms, because it was a democracy, a kind of democracy before the bad man came and the bad people. So here we go. It says the German people, united in their racial elements, impelled by the will of to renew and strengthen their Reich in freedom and justice, to serve the ends of peace at home and abroad, and further social programs, have established this constitution. Sticky, please. I'm going to be moving pretty quick through these pages, so my sticky note may be flying all over the place, all right? But I will put one up. You may need to remind me, because I'll probably move it to the side and then forget I had it. So you all know the drill by now. All right, so what we're looking at tonight, Germany and constitutions. Okay, so we'll say pre, and then during, and then post with the bad man. There we go. All right, there we go. Oh, no worries. No, I'm just saying, if I forget to put it when I'm flipping the pages, just remind me. Because I'll move it all over the place, and sometimes I forget. Which constitution's your favorite? Like in the whole world, or like in Germany? Because their most recent one's really the best, I think, in my humble opinion. So a lot of people took a look at our Constitution and turned it and moved it around and molded it for their country. And there is no other country that has the kind of federalism that we have here in the U.S., meaning we have, the 50 nifty states, and then we have the federal government. There is nothing that's quite like this in how we're set up. The beer is pretty good. I meant the world. Okay, yeah, well, I kind of like ours. I think ours is cool. I think France has a decent one. I think the UK would benefit from writing theirs down, but it's up to them. Oh my gosh. All right, so the first thing here to note about the German Constitution before the bad man is they're setting out here in their different articles the territory. The colors here are red and gold. And so they're kind of setting out all of these different pieces. Generally accepted rules of international law are to be considered as binding, integral parts of the law of the German Reich. So when we look through here, we'll see there's been quite a bit that is set out here in this first one. Let me see if there's another one. So anytime we're seeing this Reichstag, my understanding is that's essentially like their parliament. So before the bad man came, there were multiple parties, and there wasn't just one or two parties. There were multiple parties, and they made a parliament, and then they had like a head person and their executive branch, the chancellor, I believe. And so what had happened leading up to the bad man, of course, is that we had a lot of issues. Germany had a lot of issues in World War I. So at the end of World War I, Germany owed a lot of money for reparations. And this is when you may have seen clips of German money being burned in fireplaces and used as heat because they just kept printing more money in order to kind of pay, but they didn't have anything to back the money up with. So that was really a demonstration to the whole world of what happens if you just print paper money without anything backing it up. So there was a lot of problems. There were a heck of a lot of problems then in Germany, and people were struggling to eat, to heat their homes, and to do any of those kinds of activities. So of course, they're kind of like as low as you can go pretty much when we had the bad man step in with his party. So, which I won't say his party either. But we do have, again, this kind of starting constitution piece. So with that, they have this parliament that was there along with the chancellor. And what had passed in 1933 is what changed everything. And this is the Enabling Act. This is the German words here. But I do have the Enabling Act set out in the different articles here in English. So let's just take a look at this. So again, this was legally passed by essentially their Congress there and made into law. So they had a constitution, they had multiple parties, but the country wasn't doing well economically. The people were pretty upset, and that kind of weakened things enough for the bad man to come in. So when the bad man came, he wanted to make sure everything was done legally so no one could come back and challenge him. So this is the Enabling Act. Now, if you look at this act, which I've gone through multiple times, it has just 5 articles. It's very short. It's actually very short. But what happened was this gave almost all of the power away. So it took away power from their parliament as well as their president person. A lot of people didn't want to vote for it, but in the end, the bad man said, well, I'll only use it in emergency situations. And so they passed it. And then he took that power and ran with it. So let me just read through the Enabling Act here, everyone. So, and the reason, again, I want to talk about this is I want to talk about the steps and the process of actually moving from a democracy into a dictatorship. That's what happened. And the only way that could have been done was by actually changing the law in Germany to open the door for a dictator. Our constitution's the same. We would have to have federal legislation to somehow give the president a lot more power, and we'd have to go through the process of amending the Constitution. All right. So in here, they passed this legislation, but in our Constitution, if we're going to change a fundamental principle, we have to pass it as an amendment, which is 2/3. All right. Yeah, they did. Exactly. They voted it in. Are scared of multiple parties. And that's understandable. And that's absolutely understandable. We've had multiple parties in the past, but, it seems we still keep coming back to these two parties. And the two parties may have different names, but, that's what we keep coming across. So I'll go ahead and read the Enabling Act here. So just, again, keep in mind, we've got a parliament, we've got an executive. We're not going to worry about the courts. The courts are just like regular courts set up. But this is the law that changed everything. He wanted to do away with the Constitution. Right. Well, and that's the thing, is that he can't. And that's because of how the Constitution's designed. So here we go. Law to remedy the distress of the people and the rich. All right, now I'm not going to pronounce all the words correctly because I'll get dinged on it. But so even the name of the act is saying, I'm here to help you. I want to help you. I want to help the people of Germany, the working class, everyone who is suffering right now. I want to help you by eliminating this distress. So even in the name, in the preamble of the law, they're having it go forward. Oh, yes, thank you. Yes, you'll just have to remind me if I don't have this sticky up. Thank you. So here we go. The Parliament has enacted the following law, which is hereby proclaimed with the assent of the other Parliament piece. It having been established that the requirements for a constitutional amendment have been fulfilled. So their Congress, essentially their Parliament, have said we're going to change the Constitution to add these final pieces. Again, that's not something that can happen here. We would have to have 2/3 of Congress, and that's really what I'm talking about tonight, is I'm comparing and contrasting our Constitution with what happened in Germany, okay? So you have to follow me. You have to follow me down the hole. So here, they're able to pass through Parliament and change their Constitution, their articles. And for us, what we can do is we can pass by 2/3 of Congress an amendment, right? But then it has to be ratified by the states. So that's the check. That's what makes our country unique, is that our Congress can't just do whatever they want, because the states will come in and say they have a word in it as well. More and more power to the president. True, but ultimately there are certain things that they can't give to the president, like financial power. You know, the Congress has the purse strings. And what we'll see as we go through this is that whoever controls the money controls the country, and Congress is in charge of the money. So that, I think, is important to keep in mind as well. So here we go. They are adding constitutional amendments. And again, we can't do that in our Constitution without 3/4 of the states agreeing to ratify it. So that's a huge difference between the two. So here's Article 1. In addition to the procedure prescribed by the Constitution that I just was showing you, laws of the Reich may also be enacted by the government. So that's the thing. This is the moment when they hand the power over, right, to the government of the Reich. This includes the laws referred to by Article 85, Paragraph 2, and Article 87 of the Constitution. So Article 85 and 87 are the, well, let me just see if I got it here. Those are like the emergency powers. So kind of the laws that allow for martial law if something really awful happens. So that's their reference here. Again, we do not have anything like that. We do not have martial law in our Constitution, everybody. We don't. We do not anywhere in the Constitution have the power given either completely to Congress or to the president. We don't have anything like that in our Constitution. For educating. Oh, of course. Yeah, I think it's good to know so you can, so that you know how everything's working. Asking to raise the debt ceiling. Right. So, and I think it's also a really good time to go through this, right? Because our budget almost didn't get passed. And again, they have to agree in Congress, and then it has to get signed by the president. And then that third check, of course, is the Supreme Court, making sure that it's in compliance with the Constitution. So the Supreme Court, at this point, I would say, don't really look at them like, oh, there's this court out there that's going to do a bunch of stuff. Look at them more like they're kind of the compliance people at this point. Because nobody likes the Supreme Court right now. Although the term hasn't started yet. Oh, I know, Frank. I know. So it's odd. It's odd. So again, this is different. This is different as well. Article 2, laws enacted by the government of the Reich may deviate from the Constitution as long as they do not affect the institutions of the Parliament and the other Parliament. The rights of the president remain unaffected. So this is another huge piece. They are setting out who gets to actually make the laws here. That no one document in view of the camera. Oh no, I'm sorry. I've got the German version on this side. Here we go. Let's move it over. Let's move it over a little bit. There we go. How's that? Is that better? Oh my gosh. That was the key. Exactly. They're right. Well, and even so, okay, there we go. We've got it a little bit better. I understand, everybody. I understand. So, oh, you bet, you bet. So, right, exactly. Under our Constitution, it's clear the law is made by Congress. It's enforced by the president, and through judicial review, it's, the compliance check is through the Supreme Court. So, here in Article 2, they're saying laws enacted by the government of the bad people can deviate from the Constitution. That would not happen in this country. We cannot deviate from our Constitution at all. Even the Supreme Court can come in and say, well, we don't think that this is actually right. And I'll give you an example. There is a Chisholm case, and I say the name wrong every time, but we had a case way, way back in the day before, right after the Bill of Rights, and they said, we're suing the state of Georgia. And Georgia's like, well, we're a state. You can't sue us. And then the U.S. Supreme Court, under the Constitution, said, well, technically, we can. The people can sue a state. So, Georgia, you need to come into court and, take care of business. Right after that decision by the U.S. Supreme Court, the 11th Amendment was passed to tell the Supreme Court, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to have people just sue the states whenever they want, all willy-nilly. So the 11th Amendment was passed to put a check into place for the Supreme Court, which ultimately that's like the biggest check you can do. So keep that in mind. Even if our Supreme Court is coming in and explaining, these laws don't work or whatever, we can always come in and change it with an amendment. And that element was just added here into Article 2 for the Germans. Again, this is 1933 here, and then their original was back in 1919. All right, next up, so we have huge differences here. So this one is changing the law here, changing law. This one is the laws of the whole Reich can be put in. Right, so this is kind of the emergency powers. Once emergency powers are needed, then all of the laws within the Reich come into play. All right, if everyone's following me here. Next, we have Article 3. Laws enacted by the Reich government shall be issued by the Chancellor and announced in the Reich Law Gazette. They shall take effect on the day following the announcement unless they prescribe a different date. Articles 68 through 77 of the Constitution do not apply to laws enacted by the Reich government. Yikes. So this one's huge. Again, they're saying we only have one media source here, which is completely owned by the schmatzis. And they're saying you're only going to find the information you need in this one piece of propaganda. And also, again, is this idea of who's enacting the laws. So who gets to make the laws? So ultimately, what they're doing through the Enabling Act is they're saying we now, this group of us, the, Reich people, we're going to make the laws now. We don't have to follow the Constitution. We don't have to follow anything. If emergency is declared by us, then our laws come into play. Right, Congressional Daily Report. Right, but as propaganda. Although technically you probably could argue that ours is a bit propaganda too, but that's a story for another day. All right, so again, in 68 through 77, these are those emergency like martial law powers here. So then we'll flip that over until we've got one more set. I'm trying to not show anything that is extremely offensive here, so I'm kind of searching through to make sure. Just a second. Gotta make sure there's certain pictures that are not not in play. Hold on, everybody. Here we go. Okay. Oop, just a second. I tried to cross out all of the really offensive pieces, but that didn't really happen. So let's move to this point. This is kind of a summary then. So we've got articles. We just went through the first articles. Now the next articles are that the Reich people can make treaties with foreign states. That's huge, right? That affect matters of their legislation and shall not require the approval of the bodies concerned with legislation. Again, this is more of a summary piece of it. And the Reich government shall issue the regulations required for the execution of such treaties. So who gets to write the treaties up now is going to be the Reich party, and they just put it right in. And then number 5, the law takes effect with the day of its proclamation. It loses force on April 1st of 1937. Or if the present Reich government is replaced by another. So what's interesting to know is that when this date came along, 1937, because we had this originally in 1933, is they did renew it. They renewed it right in the heat of the right in the heat of the war, right? Because we're really tipping over into World War II at this point. So that's how they were able to change the law and give the bad party the power. So it was through, again, what we call the Enabling Act, everybody. So let me pull this Constitution back in here again. So this is the pre-Badman Constitution. And let's just take a look here at that article that they were talking about. So here we go. Here's 89. It gets confusing because of the name of the parliament is very similar to the name of the bad people. So that kind of is a little bit confusing for me, who is not a native German speaker. But let's just take a look here at what we have. So, okay. Here we go. Here's one of the articles that they mentioned, right? A referendum can nullify an enactment of the parliament only if a majority of those qualified to vote take part in the vote. So the things that they're talking about, again, are any changes to their constitution. So any new amendments, any new laws, all of that stuff has to be approved by this parliament. All right. So again, the whole point of this is to explain how different their rules are than our Constitution. All right. Yeah, exactly. Well, that they saw what was happening to decide. Yeah. Well, it is. And I think it's important that we all, take a moment here because we have to recognize that it was their parliament over there. The bad man had gotten enough support in Parliament to change their laws in a way that gave all the power over to the head of the bad party. All right. So again, when we're talking about that, were there Jewish people in their parliament? That's a really good question. I did not come across any of that kind of detail. There were multiple parties that made up their parliament. And when this was voted in, it looked like there was 100 people missing. And I don't know what happened to those 100 people, but they were gone. And so we don't really have a lot of information on that, or at least I don't at this point. So, that's kind of frustrating. So real quick, again, just to remind everybody of what our Constitution looks like, we have Article 1, which is the legislative branch, and also the longest of all of our articles. And within this, here, I'm going to try to make it so that it's not too far out of frame. Yikes! But with all of our different sections and all of the checks and balances put in here, there is no way that legislation like this act could possibly be done. All right, so let me just show you again the original. This is what was published in the newspaper, all right? It's in German, but this is what we just went through here. So this could not happen in the United States, and this is what gave the bad man his power. And we do that because, again, we have federalism. So in here, it lists out what Congress can do and what Congress cannot do. And there's some questions about elections, but, that's fine. They can pass legislation about elections. But when it comes to who makes the law, that's not on the table. Like, that's not even an option. Not only that, but we set out exactly, again, the powers in here. So the commerce powers in here, the paying for our militaries in here. So this is that whole budget situation that everyone was looking at, because under Section 8, they're required to pass the budget. And this cannot be given to the president. There are some things that can be given to the president, but not this. We already have the bad man. Well, we have a little different bad man. There's multiple bad mans. But also in Section 9 here, this is the next piece I wanted to say. When we're talking about the Enabling Act, the first piece is saying, we're going to give power to add the laws or add constitutional amendments or articles to one person in charge of the Rach party, is essentially what the Enabling Act does. Meanwhile, over here, and they're saying any kind of an emergency situation then triggers this so that the Rach party can take over the whole country because there's some kind of hostility, right? So martial law. For us, in our Constitution, the only thing that's anywhere near this martial law question, when a lot of people have had this question, like, can the president just declare martial law and then, start putting people in tents or whatever? A lot of people are asking that, but we don't have that capability here. What we have, and what is the biggest sign when it comes to martial law, is the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus, and it shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. So they have even passed some legislation then that explains things a little further. Two pieces of legislation that are right on the top of my head here that I can't remember is we've got a posse one, and then we've got another one. The name escapes me again. But through these two other acts, the names of which I can't give you, they limit military power. So when we're looking at that's not how you spell that. You're all with me, so that's okay. So when we're looking at the German Constitution, everything, boom, went to the leader of the bad party. All of it, all the powers. But here, like, Congress has even taken away power from the military through legislation. So the only way for us to even look at any kind of a martial law situation, first of all, we have to have someone ask us. So states can say, can you declare martial law? So there has to be a request from the states, and every state has their own rules on what they have to do in order to request it. Or it's possible for the president to declare that, but only over his jurisdiction, which is DC. So it's possible he could call troops in for DC, which was the big argument on January 6th, right? They're saying, well, who has the power to call in the troops? Maybe the mayor, maybe, the Speaker of the House, although that's wrong. But the president does too, because he's essentially the governor of DC. Thank you, Posse Comitatus. Yes, thank you so much. I always forget that. So that's set out here as well. So we've just got one sentence here. Meanwhile, all of the German Enabling Act gives power immediately to who's ever head of this party, all right, the bad party. So very different structure. And next, then, of course, we have Article 2, which sets out the president. Here's our Electoral College, which has been changed through the 12th Amendment. But again, here's where the requirements are. Vested in a president of the United States, he shall hold the office during the term of 4 years. Here, and over here, it says no person except natural born citizen. So this is why, what's his name? Musk? What's his name? That's a terrible name. I don't mean any disrespect, but that's just a weird name. So Mr. Musk would not qualify here because he was not a natural born citizen, all right, or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution, which doesn't count either. Could a state of emergency create some sort of martial law scenario? So great question. And if we have an emergency type situation, you're looking more at this issue of not allowing for habeas corpus. Habeas corpus means you get picked up by the cops, you get taken to jail, and you have a right to be heard by a judge. So by eliminating habeas corpus, you're basically saying the president can tell the military to pull whomever they want off the streets and put them in jail. And the people put into jail do not have a right to be heard by a court. So that really is what our martial law looks like here. Now, there are emergency times when the National Guard can come in if we've got really bad storms, or of course, when we had desegregation in our schools. That was a really big one. So if there is assistance that's needed, the National Guard can come in. But military cannot take over the law enforcement locally. So the local law enforcement is the one that's supposed to take is supposed to take care of that situation. So what had happened actually and let me just clarify, when we had our desegregation, is that in Arkansas, the governor had told the law enforcement in the area to stand in front of the school so that no one could enter the school. So that's why the president was like, get the National Guard in there, because we need to clarify that this law is not being followed. So we actually had kind of an uncomfortable situation between state and federal. That's why they were called in. Truly, the only time I've really seen or researched true martial law in the US was during World War II in Hawaii. And Hawaii wasn't a state at that time. So there was some power over Hawaii by the United States. But again, because it was not one of the states, the level of authority, the level of military influence was different because of that. So that's another factor to consider. I don't believe that Hawaii could ever have that situation again because they're a state, and because with a governor of the state, and the state rules and regulations would not allow for that situation to occur again. Does that make sense? Makes my husband, he does. He does. So keep that in mind. I think it's always important to note that, but also to not be afraid of it, not to be afraid of it. Lincoln during the Civil War. Right. So let's talk about that one. Thank you so much for reminding me. So Abraham Lincoln suspended habeas corpus during the Civil War, meaning, again, people that they thought were fighting, or, in one particular case, they were like burning bridges down. There was like 500 of the people, the Confederate people, that were like, no, you can't come in here. And so he suspended habeas corpus, meaning he sent military out such that he could. Our military was, pretty much taking a hard hit, but and said, look, just arrest them, put them into military jails, put them in the forts, lock them up, and we'll deal with them after the war. Because we don't have time to go through courts right now because there's stuff going down. So Lincoln suspended habeas corpus. And what happened was he suspended it because Congress wasn't in session. So Congress could have suspended habeas corpus, which would probably have been more appropriate. But Congress wasn't in session. So let's just pretend that they couldn't pass a budget and the government shut down. So Lincoln was like, dude, we're suspending it, and I got stuff to do. The Supreme Court was extremely upset with him. And then when Congress came back, they passed a law that did allow him to suspend habeas corpus. But again, it was for a very small period of time. And it was primarily because of the rebels as Confederate soldiers going in and like destroying different things for the Northern Army, right? Yes, right. Postponed habeas corpus. Now, the other big time that habeas corpus has hit, and for me, this was one of my biggest pet peeves about Obama, quite frankly, was habeas corpus became a huge question for the USA Patriot Act, which no longer is in play. Pieces of it have been reborn in other statutes. But in that situation, there's one crime. If you're suspected of the T crime, your habeas corpus is like really low. So asking for a court to hear you or to get you out of prison or have a trial, good luck, because the USA Patriot Act really got in the way of how our Constitution worked. And I'm not a big fan of the Patriot Act. I've read through that, and the amount of violations of the Constitution that were in there is just like, what are you people doing? But that was another piece of when we saw habeas corpus kind of in the questionable area for quite a long time. We still have, and I think it was just maybe last month, maybe early November, we still have people who've not had trials that are still in jail today for the September 11th situation. Did y'all know that? We still have suspected people in jail who have not had trials, right? So they're trying to make like plea agreements still, but at this point, just imagine that, how that would be. I mean, I'm not trying to diminish how important it is to find people responsible and hold them accountable. They have been in prison for 20 years with no trial. So that's the USA Patriot Act situation. I think there's about 5 of them at this point. Yeah. And I think it was maybe 2 or 3 actually had tried to do a plea agreement, and the judge turned them down and said, no, I don't accept this plea agreement. So back to the clink they went. Yes, exactly. There's a Patriot Act and then the PATRIOT Act. Lots of words there. But yeah, I mean that's a really big deal. So, and I'm not a big fan of that. I'm more into like we have laws, so let's go through the courts, but that's just me apparently. Hello, Icy Payne. Good to see you. So again, just to remind everybody, this is what our martial law looks like. When we don't have a right to be seen by a court, that is when we've got martial law in here. Unlike in Germany, where if there's an emergency going on, then the Reich people and the bad man take over. They just take over everything because of the Enabling Act. So emergency, maybe there's like some kind of weather issue going on in Germany. That's fine because the Reich people come in and take everything over because of the Enabling Act. You talked about the signing of the effective AEDPA. Oh, goodness. I don't have enough knowledge of that, but I can put it on my list here. Hold on, I'm putting it on my list. On my list to take a look at. Yeah, if they try Luigi as a T, can they avoid a trial with jurors? So that's a great question, and I would say no, I don't think so. I've got to take a look into that particular situation because I'm not sure exactly what the code sections are, but we do not have the Patriot Act in place anymore when that was okay to do. So you just had to be suspected of the T, and the Patriot Act would attach, and then your rights were just over. You didn't have any more rights, and it didn't matter where you were from. You just didn't have any rights. So I do not know exactly the statute that he's been charged under, but I'll take a look at it. That's gonna kind of be my task for next week here. So, and then here we go. So Article 2, let's move past Article 2 here. The only issue that we're having here with Article 2 at the moment is that we don't have anything that says you can't be a felon, right? That should probably be added. And then we have this immunity question, which isn't very clear. Next, we've got Article 3, which are the courts. And that's the other thing too. So under the Enabling Act, there's no talk about courts. Mostly even in their constitution, they don't talk about the courts. Our U.S. Supreme Court is very unusual because it was a court case that gave them most of their power. That's not what happened in Germany. So their court system doesn't really work as a check. It's just present for taking care of business. So I think that's something also that needs to be acknowledged. Even when Lincoln, and I think I've told you this story before, but when Lincoln suspended habeas corpus, his military people caught a man named, is it Merriman? So Mr. Merriman had been part of a group that had blown up a bridge so that the North Army couldn't go past, right? So they were interfering with, the Union people. So they arrested him and took him to a base, all right? And so Mr. Tandy, Justice Tandy, although those words shouldn't go together, was like, dude, why is this guy in jail? I want to talk to him, right? And so he was at a military post. So he sent in, who he could send in, the marshals, and said, we need this guy to go see the Supreme Court justice. And the military were like, well, Lincoln said, we don't have habeas corpus here and we're going to keep him because, here he is. And they came back and said, no, we really want him. And they're like, you're going to have to fight us. And so Tandy was like, fine. And they just got mad rather than having a little fight between the U.S. Marshals and the U.S. military. They're like staring each other down, like, give me the guy. No, give me the guy. No. Oh, it cracks me up every time I read it. Anywho, so Justice Tandy was pretty upset about that situation. And Lincoln was like, that's just too dang bad. We've got to do what we've got to do. So eventually, again, laws were passed to make it more comfortable for everybody involved. But yeah, story time, exactly. Story time, yeah. So this is a very interesting case. Tandy is not a good justice. He was a bad man. He was a bad man. Really, really bad man. But I love how Lincoln kind of kicked him around. He's just kicking the Supreme Court Chief Justice around. He's like, you want some of this? Come see. I'll show you some. It was really funny. All right, anyway, I digress. So, Article 3, again. Oh my gosh. Now, Article 4, everyone, which nobody really pays attention to because, it's not flashy. It doesn't sell on the front page of a newspaper is what I'm trying to say for Article 4. But Article 4 establishes federalism, and this is the key, right? There cannot be a situation where a dictatorship comes into play so long as Article 4 is applicable. Now, nothing has been done in order to remove Article 4. It would take a constitutional amendment in order to do that. So, Section 4 of Article 4 says the United States shall guarantee, so the federal government, the president, everyone, shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion and on application of the legislature or of the executive where the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence. So Section 4 means that we can't have a dictatorship. Now, some people are saying, well, people don't follow the Constitution. And to that I say, well, you're supposed to, right? You're supposed to follow the Constitution. And people get mad if you don't. And if you look at the quantity and quality of the egos on Capitol Hill, I don't see how someone can come in without a pretty significant fight. Because we're fighters over here. We just fight against everything. Like, oh, you don't want us to be a republic anymore? Well, you're going to have to go through me, right? So we're going to have all of that. Does the bad man know? So I think something to remember, everybody. Let me get my little chart out here. I have to hide it from my husband because every time he sees this chart, he freaks out. So let me see. I've got to dig for it. Just a second. Sorry, everybody. 1 minute, please. Where did I put it? He may have actually taken it. Just a second here. Oh, here it is. Sorry, everybody. Here's the chart. My husband takes this and puts it all over the place. He's like, I don't want to see it. I'm going to do that. Oh, my goodness. So hold on here a second. The reason I put this up is because I want to show you this guy right here. Now, Mr. Eastman, I know. Won't have him defame me. It's only defamation if it's not true. So, Mr. Eastman is this constitutional scholar, all right? So, I'm sorry about your supper, I know. But John Eastman is the man that's like whispering all these little ideas into Mr. Trump's head. So he's like Rasputin, in my humble opinion, where he will come in and he'll say, whoa, what about this? What about that? Let's try this. Let's try that, because he's taught constitutional law for a really long time. And for anyone that hung out with me during the mini trial in Colorado, where they were taking on witnesses to determine whether or not the 14th Amendment, Section 3 actually was applicable. They had a full trial on it. And one of the people that they pulled in was this Constitution scholar. And he wasn't very good, but he's also reminding me of Eastman. So all of these kind of like, not really loopholes, but all of these things that are catching, that aren't exactly ironed out, is because he has this history of teaching constitutional law. So he's throwing stuff to Mr. Trump. And Mr. Trump's like, sure, yeah, let's do that. And Giuliani doesn't know anything about what's going on with anything. But this is the guy. This right here is the guy. And I think Eastman and the number 2 is going to be Clark. And between these two people and probably some extra support, from the Penguin, yeah, they're doing all kinds of weird things with the Constitution. Is your filter on? I took it off. It shouldn't be on. Is it on? I don't want to get it too close. Murray, look away. Look away. It shouldn't. It was on the last time, though. That was really funny. Oh, thanks, Crypto. All right. So that's my spiel. When we're saying somebody needs to tell Trump about what the Constitution says, yes. But also the other thing, too, and this is kind of what we all refer to as, and the con law dinosaur man, which is how I've always referred to the super old attorneys that are like, well, I know everything about everything. I'm like, that's because you lived in the Wild West. Oh my gosh, he's one of them. So he's going to kind of be like, oh, we talked about this over, drinks the other day. Let's try it again. And so then all this rubbish gets passed in front of the American people. And the American people are like, I'm scared because it's such a bologna sandwich. Did you add Elon? I have not. I'll have to add. Oh my gosh. All right, everybody. So the bottom line here is that Section 4 guarantees this Republican form of government. And it doesn't say the states. It says the United States, which means the federal government, the president, the Congress, and the Supreme Court. All 3 of those are guaranteeing every state having a Republican form of government. All right? Kind of default filter. I've wondered too, because I keep trying to turn it off. I think there was one where he had like a hat on or like really thick black eyeliner. That was a rough one for everybody. It's a rough night. All right. Back here to Article 5. Oh my gosh. All right. So we have the amendment process here through Article 5. So unlike here, where they just added this saying, we're going to add whatever amendments we want, this is the statute that gave them that power. So the bad guy was like, hey, I want to have power to make amendments to the Constitution. So they wrote this statute, passed it, and off it goes. For us, if we have bad guys that want to write amendments, they have to go through Congress or Constitutional Convention, and then, of course, through the ratification process. So it's almost impossible for one bad man to come in with that level of power in the United States because we are so divided. I know we shouldn't be so divided, but there's good things that come with being divided. It means we can, kind of smack the other guy around a little bit with your language, right? Use your words to hurt, not your hands. So we got to be careful about that. To fight against an alternative government. That's a great way of putting it. Our Homestead, that's a wonderful way of putting it. Article 4 provides the people power to fight against an alternative government. Exactly right. And then Article 5 sets out, we can't just be passing statutes with a simple majority that gets signed by an executive that makes it so that the Constitution can be changed at a whim. All right, we just don't have that. And that's because of Article 5 here. Oh my gosh. Murray, go get yourself some liquid bread. All right. So Article 6 here goes into the debts and how they're going to take care of that because, of course, we had huge debt issues going on because of the war. And then 7 here is ratification of the Constitution itself. So those are the 7 articles that created the government. All of those amendments that came later. But this is how our government's actually set up. Now, we're not seeing that in Germany. That is not what they had in Germany. They had the structure and function of the situation, and they went through and set all of that out, and they put some details in there. But they do not have a federalism piece. And honestly, everybody, that makes all the difference. And again, people are like, well, they don't have to follow the Constitution. Well, the military has to. The military has to follow the Constitution. They take an oath. Law enforcement has to. They also take an oath. Judges all of them. And, Congress, they have to take an oath too. So they have to follow the Constitution. If they don't, they break their oath and they could actually get charged with breaking their oath. So the law has to be followed. Yes. Oh, Jesse, I'll put this up on my Tube of You. I've been posting every day over there. So I will have that up for you. They must follow it. They have to follow it, Deb. They have to follow the Constitution. And again, people are like, well, who's going to enforce that? Well, if you take one step back and look at our country and look at where the power would be, like I think South Korea was a great example, because in South Korea, their leaders like, okay, we're going to do martial law. And then he had pulled in military. Now, if you look and see how the citizens in South Korea were like, oh no, this is not happening. And the military is like, what are we supposed to do? Oh my gosh. And then some of them even got sanctioned. And so if you look at our military in the United States, I'm not saying that they are, perfect in every way. No, but the dedication to the Constitution is so solid that I have no doubt whatsoever that the Constitution will win out over a person every time. Right? So that's kind of how that happens. Right, when getting credentials, exactly. Took the oath, will defend. Exactly. The key is the people. And that's right. And again, even those people that are doing some questionable things, we're still getting the questions answered through the Supreme Court. Now, we may not like the answers, but at least the Supreme Court's not saying, well, they can do whatever they want. And we're just going to say, here's the keys to the kingdom, go and enjoy. Because the Supreme Court doesn't want to give any power away. So they're not going to give you the keys to the car. They're going to be like, no, I don't think so. Yes, even with this SCOTUS, everybody. And I know this SCOTUS isn't the best by far. Hold on, Murray. Murray, don't take a bite of food. Here's the Supreme Court here. And we've got some questions going on here. We've got a couple of justices here that are, wow, way craziness. So it seems bad. But as I've gone through before, we have a complete wild card here, a mid-level wild card. And I don't know about this guy. This guy's got, he'll do whatever he wants. It seems like he's a very strict originalist, but then other times he's not. So, it's hard to tell. But this Supreme Court is not in anybody's pocket. This guy might be. But nobody else, all right? So I don't know what's going on with this one. He's got a money issue going on. But when we look at our court and you say, well, this is, extremely conservative. Well, yeah, you're right. But we also had a very, very conservative court in the early 90s as well, when we first saw the first huge hit against Roe v. Wade in the form of the Casey case. That was answered in the 90s when we had Rehnquist and Scalia. So, we've had conservative courts like this before, just to put that out there. Now, I'm not saying, again, that they're going to be helpful or supportive of individual rights, but I'm just saying we can't bank on them making absolutely sure that they're going to decide a certain way. We just don't know. We don't know how it's going to turn out. Who could pass terms for SCOTUS? Congress. Congress can. That's up to Congress. If you want term limits, though, that'll have to go through the Constitution. The puppet pens. Right, the puppet. Here's one. I've got one, the puppet pens. It's Justice Sotomayor. Oh my gosh, they're not very far away. Well, yeah, I was... Sorry about that, Alito, but not really. Oh, by the way, Bring It On, too. My goodness, they're going after people right now, some ethics issues. So hopefully that helps everyone understand. Oh, Thomas, I'll take you through from the top, but hopefully that helps everybody understand. So what I have been talking about, we have a constitution in Germany that was set out in 1919, all right? And then we had the Enabling Act passed by their own government in 1933 that basically gave all of the powers to make the laws, enforce the laws, change the Constitution, finances, all of that stuff was given to the Reich Party. And the person leading the Reich Party, of course, was the very, very bad man. So the bad man and his bad people all were given almost unlimited genie power through this enabling act. So that's what we've been talking about. And then we've been talking about how our Constitution is set up with all of our different articles and how that cannot happen in the United States. It's not possible because of how our government is structured. And, it's intentionally that way because the writers were like, we got to be careful. And we have a very unique government, unlike anywhere else in the world. And I know this because a lot of people from other countries will be like, what does this even mean, this federalism? I don't get it. And I'm like, well, you and me both. But, Europe with the European Union's probably as close as we could see. Canada's got the different areas, but overall it's still Canada. And they've only got like a handful, and I know, I said areas. That's wrong, everybody, and that's my bad. I need to learn more about Canadian government. And Africa, my goodness, I would say Africa probably has the best setup if a continent wanted to actually come together as one unit and then have each of the countries, kind of in a state-like situation. I'm just saying that because there's so many different countries in Africa, the continent, that if everybody was to be like, okay, the president of the continent of Africa, and then each of the individual countries would have their own presidents and governors. So structurally, it could work in Africa. It's not realistic to try to make a whole continent understand. It's the same for South America. We don't have anything like that other than the United States, where we have 50 states, essentially 50 little countries, all working under one umbrella in federalism. Our 51st state. Now, Scott, let me tell you all something here. That's driving me bonkers because I would remind everybody that in the Articles of Confederation, we tried to get Canada to join us. And Canada was like, you all are insane. And we are not going to join you. But they actually added an article stating, and if Canada wants to join us later, after they've got time to think about it, that'd be great. But Canada's like, no, I don't think so. Oh my gosh. The major insult to Canada. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, Canada's got they've got their own stuff going on over there. They're like our sanctuary country. All right, so before we get too much further down the rabbit hole of insulting entire continents and countries, right? Africa is a continent, not a country. You have to remember that. So let's take a look then at what happened. Now, after the bad man and his bad people were called out and went bye-bye, then we had another constitution come into play. So this is the most current constitution. And if we compare this to how it was before the bad man. So first of all, the preamble is completely different. Conscious of their responsibilities before God and man, inspired by the determination to promote world peace as an equal partner, is a united Europe. The German people, in the exercise of their constituent power, have adopted this basic law. Now, how crazy is that difference? Let me again read the preamble for before the bad man. The German people, united in their racial elements and impelled by the will to renew and strengthen their Reich in freedom and justice to serve the ends of peace here and abroad and further social progress, have established this constitution. It's like night and day. Right? It's night and day. So this is their constitution now. Again, they're trying to promote world peace and bring everyone back together again. So, and their current constitution is very specific. We've got human dignity is Article 1. So basically their First Amendment is human dignity. I mean, that says a lot. And I think it's incredible. And I think everybody should have this piece in, their government structure. So human dignity shall be inviolable To respect and protect it shall be the duty of all state authority. The German people therefore acknowledge inviolable and inalienable human rights as the basis of every community of peace and of justice in the world. The following basic rights shall bind the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary as directly applicable law. And then they come through and go through that. But it's amazing. It's amazing how this changed, right? And it was in a very short period of time. Now, right now, again, we can go through this Constitution, but right now, one of the issues going on is they're having a fight amongst the parties. It seems like a lot of countries are having fights with their parties right now. And so that's why they're having this German government has fallen situation. Now, technically, it's not fallen, but there is a vote of no confidence that's going to need to get sorted out in January. There's a date set for that. So Germany is going to need to get themselves sorted out. I'm assuming that the no confidence vote is being campaigned one way or the other in Germany right now. I'm just assuming that. I do not know, but I believe it would be appropriate. I want to hug, what's so, yeah, I don't think we can ever have, just in my perspective, I don't believe we could ever have the Holocaust again, because I think the Holocaust in and of itself is owed it's owed to have respect and acknowledgement for that. I think we will have the genocide. We will have lots of the bad things. But for me, I try to keep the Holocaust separate just to acknowledge the uniqueness of the Holocaust. So I wouldn't say we're going to see that again. We're definitely going to see some human rights violations. We're going to see some genocide situations. But for me, I see the Holocaust as its own self that stands alone, that needs that level of respect of it being its own creature. So that's my thought on it. Never say never. Well, I don't know. I really don't say never very often, so it's unique if I do. But yeah, neurodivergent chaos. Man, that'd be interesting. Yeah, so, that's just what I'm saying, because it's just such a horrific situation that, So, and there are a lot of countries around the world that have had similar awful situations, but that one I think goes to the front of the class. Vote no confidence in France too. Can you compare with Germany? So I don't have France's constitution with me right now. And I get a little confused because it looks like they've got like a person in charge of parliament. So I guess like the Speaker of the House would be the equivalent. And then they've got like this president with Macron. And so it's like the person in charge of their legislative branch got the boot, but the person in charge of their executive branch is still hanging on by his fingernails. And then I'm not even sure about their court system either. So what happened was that breakdown in their Congress parliament piece. And then, of course, the backlash that's coming to Macron because of that. Right. So, yeah, if we've got a vote of no confidence for the leader of the legislative branch in France, like that's bad business. They need to get somebody in place. The other thing, too, is that France has some unique deadlines when it comes to elections. Like you can only have an election, I think, like every other year or something like that. And I suppose that makes sense because, France equals revolution. That's all I think of. When I hear France, I'm like, are they revolting this year? We don't know. Is there revolution? Not this year, maybe next year. So it makes sense, but it's also hard to keep track of when the next election could be because they're very careful about making sure that elections occur so the people are represented. But on the other hand, you get into a situation where it's a hybrid, where your parliament leader is like, he's rubbish and we can't have another election for a while. Right. Just joining from California. I hope you're well. I am. Thanks. So we'll have to see. And again, Germany too, they've got again, the legislative, executive, and a judicial branch, but they're kind of set up a little bit different. And, again, when the Constitution, when the United States was first being created, there was just a whole bunch of mishmashing going on. People didn't really have this separation of powers going on. If you look back at the history of Germany and France, any place that had a monarchy previously, I think Thomas Jefferson went over to France to try to be like, dudes, this is what we're doing. I don't know if it's going to work for you, but, here's what we've got. When it came to declaring their independence and so on. So, and then if you move further east and you even get into Russia or the former Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union fell, they created a brand new government, a democratic government, which was just great. It looked almost just like the US, where each country now became kind of a state situation, but not all countries went back to Russia. They wanted to be their own people. And so Russia itself had this, dual set of Congress and then their courts and then their executive branch, which of course is all crumbled now, but has to wait until summer to have an election. Yeah, exactly. That sounds right. But the Russian government and the Russian Constitution right after the fall of the USSR was a great constitution, and it could be a lot of it was actually based off of Germany. A lot of it was based off of what we were doing here in the US. It was really good. But, again, you pass legislation that gives somebody the power to change the laws whenever he wants, you're done. So that's kind of what's going on there. You have to defeat the country. Right. France, right. 7 years war. Yep. Wasn't Russia the first to leave USSR? So it kind of all came down at the same time. So the individual countries in there, and you have to kind of remember too, around that same time we were having the revolution in the Balkans, right? When we had Yugoslavia, and they're like, we're not doing that anymore. It's kind of all in that same vein. It happened around the same times. I mean, within a few years. Where there was, Kosovo and all of those kinds of things. So it's hard to know exactly what the order was, but Russia absolutely took the lead because they were the biggest. They were the biggest place there. They set up what they wanted to do with their constitution and started to go forward on it. And had some luck with that. They had some progress. Things started to get better for their people at first, and then they didn't. So there you go with that. That's what happened with Russia. Poor Russia. Yes, I feel bad. I feel bad for Russia. I don't know. I've got a soft spot in my heart for Russia. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a double agent or something like that. But I just, remember following the rebuilding of their entire world after the USSR fell and just watching and seeing, what the people wanted to do when it was like the birth of another democracy. And so over the years, as it slowly has become not so much that, it's painful. I feel bad for them. So, and that's my opinion on that. For anybody else that took USSR classes in college, you know what I'm talking about. Oh my gosh. Anyway, back on track here, everybody. So this is their new constitution right here. We're going to have to wait and see how they kind of pick up the broken pieces and put it back together again. But again, my goal for tonight, everybody, was to make it so very, very clear. So there should not be a question in anybody's mind here that someone can just come in and get rid of the Constitution or change our form of government. It's just not possible. And you cannot order the military to do something that's unconstitutional, right? So those generals out there, if they know that this is unconstitutional, they cannot in good conscience have their people go forward on it. So I think that's important to know. Also, when we've got the National Guard, they're limited in what they can do. And usually a state needs to ask for help if they want help. Our martial law does not work the same way that other countries' martial law works. We just use that term more frequently rather than saying the right to suspend habeas corpus, because that takes more words. So, oh my gosh. So yeah, we got to remember that. I feel bad for the people. There's still plenty. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's just, yeah. I was supposed to go to the USSR until, oh yeah. Yeah, I struggle to go to countries where I can't speak their language. So I try to have at least a basic understanding of the language, which for Russian is no. But maybe China someday, maybe. I have to work on that quite a bit. My Mandarin's not great. Some parts of the Constitution from the indigenous peoples. So that's a fun question. The actual Articles of Confederation, this idea of the Confederation, that came from the native peoples. And I just lost the name of the people. Ipecac or oh, I can't pronounce it. I forgot it. But it was inspired by the confederations that several tribes had put together. And so it was kind of patterned after that. And then our Constitution also took pieces from the Articles of Confederation that they like. So there are bits and pieces in there that do come from our indigenous people. Can a non-U.S. citizen be the Speaker of the House? Yes. You don't have to be a U.S. citizen to be Speaker of the House because that's how it's written in the Constitution. All right, so the Constitution just says you have to be a certain age. Here, you have to be a certain age, and let me make sure. And you have to have a residence in the U.S. That's it. That's all. Yes, Iroquois. Thank you. Thank you. Iroquois Confederacy. Right. Thank you so much. Yes, and Benjamin Franklin especially was absolutely fascinated by the Iroquois and just like observed them with his whole heart. He just absolutely adored them. And so when those articles were put together in the beginning, there was a lot of inspiration from the native peoples. Second line for president. Right. So the presidency goes, and this is set out too. It goes the president, the vice president, the Speaker of the House, the president pro tempore, so not the vice president, but the leader of the Senate here, and then a Secretary of State and Secretary of the Treasury. So that's the order of succession were something to happen to the president. Now, if anybody in there was not native born, you wouldn't qualify, so you get kicked off. You get kicked off the roster. You can't get chosen. If the president and VP no longer, their speaker would be first in line. How'd that work? Right. So if you're not qualified to be president, then you're eliminated, right? You're eliminated from the succession, so they'd skip over you. And that can very well happen sometimes, and has been discussed many times in constitutional law theories on succession, which we have worked so hard to hammer out and not done a really great job about it. It's a bit like the Electoral College. Like, it doesn't quite work right, but we haven't figured out a way to make it better yet. But if you don't qualify, you cannot be in that role. So you just would get skipped over. No, Musk can never be president. He can never be president. He wasn't born here. There are 44 House resolutions today. Yeah, it's weird how they're doing all kinds of weird stuff. Well, we've got a lame duck. So with a lame duck, all kinds of stuff's going to be coming down. Yeah, they'll just skip over MVC. Exactly. Go on to the next person. No, that's just, people making people scared. And I think it's a good question because now we can learn what it means for presidential succession. And, if for some reason, you could even look at it like I don't even know who the youngest representative is, right? You have to be a certain age in order to be a representative, but you also have to be a certain age in order to be president. And so if you're super young and you can be Speaker of the House, or you're pulled into the speaker role, but you're not old enough to be president, then we're going to step over you. I think AOC, that sounds right, but I'm not sure. But yeah, because in order to be president, you have to be 35, right? Let's look and see since I got it right here. Okay, so you have to be 25 to be a representative, but to be the president, you have to be 35, right? Let's just double check. Let me check my numbers here. Here we go, blah, 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 blah. Here we go, blah, 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 blah. Here. Oh, 35, right. So if you are, 30 in the House and you're Speaker of the House, you cannot be president because you are not old enough. So you have to have, the qualifications in order to come into that role. All right. So that's kind of another way to think about it. So he wasn't born in the country, so he cannot be president. If someone is not 35, they cannot be president. It just goes to the next one. Really, 40? Wow, that's great. Great, great, great. Yeah. AOC or JC. Okay. Oh, Frost is the youngest. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So if, they were Speaker of the House and something happened, they wouldn't be able to take the role of president because those rules still apply. But the order of the people is what would be the key there. 25 for Congress. Right. That works out fine. I'm over 35 in my house. Perfect. All right, Murray. Excellent. we love to hear it. We love to hear it. You should write me a letter when that happens. I'm going to be like, yay, Murray, woohoo. Who's after the speaker? So we have, again, it's the president, the vice president, the speaker of the House, the president pro tempore of the Senate. Now, the reason it's called that is because the vice president technically is the lead in the Senate, but the vice president's already right after the president. So the vice president's got to be gone if we're going to get to the speaker of the House. So vice president's gone, speaker of the House is gone, then we go to the president pro tempore, which the Senate chooses who that person is. Then after that, we go into the cabinet. We have Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury. Do I need a megaphone? I think everyone should have a megaphone, in my opinion. Why not have a megaphone? Oh my gosh, that'd be better for everybody. Yeah, so he's in a different branch, or not different branch, but he's in transportation, I think, right? Order of succession is the order of creation of the cabinet positions. Yes, exactly, Chris. Exactly right. So, and I was surprised myself that the Secretary of the Treasury was so high up on the list, but but it is. So that's the order. And again, you have to be natural born. You have to be 35. If you don't have those two things, you cannot be the president. Even though you can technically still be representative. Right. Thank you so much. Oh, of course. So again, I thought tonight would be a good time to kind of offer this information up so that you can go and pull it up yourself as well if you're interested. That Enabling Act, again, is what changed everything. And the idea was if we can use our own Constitution to pass a law to make it so that we are in charge of the Constitution, then we can take over the government. And that's exactly what they did here. Yeah, that's exactly what they did. Kind of surprised Treasury Secretary. Oh, all right. Fair. Oh my gosh. Anything filed lately? So let me think here. I've got, right now, I think Georgia is still reeling from Miss Fani being pulled from the case. And we do have in New York, we're still kind of waiting on what's going to happen for the New York civil case. The only thing that I've noticed that's been filed has been another request from the plaintiffs in the Giuliani case, request to find him in contempt for failing to comply with the order. So that's probably the most recent filing that I've got on any of the cases right now, is the Giuliani defamation case where they're saying, dude, he's not showing up for court. Could we become the Handmaid's Tale? So that's a great question. And I guess my perspective on the Handmaid's Tale is a little bit different because I feel like we went through something similar to that already. Like during the Puritan times, something very similar to that was going on. And so I think there will always be some element of oppression for women. And so I can't say that we will turn into it, but I think oppression of women has a lot of different forms. That's my 2 cents on it. For putting this information out, it's so refreshing to hear. Well, yeah, I do try my best to give a glimpse of the middle of the road, but Fonnie's appealing to the Georgia Supreme Court. Right, right. And I think that's good. Again, this piece of this appearance of impropriety is so hard to acknowledge, to find. So our courts kind of swim around in it. And that's what the Court of Appeals did. They said, well, to us, it looks like the appearance of impropriety is too much. But to Judge McAfee, it wasn't too much. So now we've got one of each. We've got one saying you're fine and one saying, no, you're not fine. And so it would make sense to appeal it and get that final answer. Right, right. Mormons were closed 20 years ago. Yeah, I think that's fair. Giuliani's busy chasing pigeons. Oh my goodness. Well, he doesn't have any bread to throw him, does it? I don't know. Oh, Giuliani, man, he's in quite the pickle. And, you know, his attorneys in Georgia have dropped him. He's got no one representing him in Georgia. His New York attorneys are like, we're out of here. And the judge just ordered them. They're like, fine, go. I mean, there's so many things going on, and he just cannot keep attorneys, which means he's going to be his own fault. Exactly right. Exactly. It's, you know, his call. And again, he would be one that I would be referring to as dinosaur in the legal community. A lot of our dinosaurs are practicing well beyond the years that they should be. So we're struggling. We're struggling with that. Yeah, he created this pickle. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, that's genius. Genius. Who said that? My guardian angel drinks. Oh my gosh. Yes, yes, genius. Because it's he attack. Right. Regarding the Handmaid's Tale. I think that's a fair assessment, Thomas. I think if we were in that kind of an emergency situation, yeah, I think that's another good question. But again, you know, if you look at how from the beginning women have been treated, and one of my favorite stories that of the indigenous peoples trying to, communicate and work with the colonists or the Puritans that came over, one of my favorite stories is that the women, the Mayflower women, we'll just call them the Mayflower women, right? In the early days, they were talking and communicating with the indigenous women, and the indigenous women were like, you have to do what? That's crap. You shouldn't have to do that. So all of these Puritan women were like, what? You don't have to do this? And the indigenous women are like, no, we don't, and we shouldn't. So, you know, get your fellas under control. And it was like, what? I think that's why they were so frustrated, was because they had this new perspective on how women could be treated so much better than they were being treated. And so then they're like, we're leaving. Oh my gosh. Long in the tooth. Exactly right, Shelley. Exactly right. Oh, I know. I love it too. I really love it because it's our indigenous people that really started opening so many doors to different ideologies and, you know, learning different ways of dealing with problems. It's fascinating. I think it's wonderful. New prosecutor, not yet. Yes, several are matriarchal. Yep. Yep, exactly. They don't have a new one. Having me come into this live with a jump scare. Sorry. Sorry. What? There we go. We're back. Here's the Constitution. Here's the Enabling Act in German. We're good to go. Sorry about that. It scares people. Of course, I agree. It is because of, it is a blend. It is a blend. And I wish more people would learn about that, in my humble opinion. So, well, with that, everyone, it's been 90 minutes, so I will go ahead and sign off for now. But thank you for coming by and learning about the German Constitution and the Enabling Act in our own Constitution, comparing and contrasting. So now you know what's going on. So, you know, you can exhale on that. We can start worrying about all of the other stuff now instead of just this. So I will say, again, thank you all for coming, and moderators, thank you for hanging out. Always appreciate it so much. I will be back again very soon. Typically, I do my subscriber Sundays, so I think that will, I still need a beer. Murray. Yes, indeed. Exactly, exactly. So I will be back again soon. At the latest, it'll be Sunday. But again, I do have those executive orders. I want to make it through more of those and then more of P25. So take care, everybody, and make sure to share your knowledge with anyone else. Now you know what's going on. So take care of yourselves, everyone, and I will be back again very soon.